Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining our conversation today around digitalization in data centers, focused on increasing uptime, reducing risk for our data centers. My name is Cathal Murphy. I'm Global Strategic Account Manager for Honeywell in the data center sector, serving a number of hyperscale clients and large co-location providers. I'm joined today by Peter Sprenkeler, Technical Facility Manager for Equinix, by Coen from, forgive my pronunciation, Coen, Channel Sales Leader for the Benelux for Honeywell for Security, by Frank Bakker, Sales Manager for Beveco, a system integrator in this sector. To begin our conversation, 2020 was a very challenging year for data centers and for everybody involved in the data center sector. It's been a rough ride for most of us. And to begin with this, I think we should all take a step back and actually realize the contribution that data center players have played in 2020 and the contribution that they've made to society as a whole. Our children are still in school because of data centers, because they're able to do homeschooling. During the COVID pandemic, a lot of our customers, a lot of our end users, a lot of the broader public were able to revert to home office simply because data centers gave them the option to do that. Therefore, for everybody involved in the sector, regardless of whom you're working for, a big pat on the back. I think you guys are awesome. We've indicated that the sector is critical, is a part of our critical infrastructure, and in that sense has been a facilitator for all of us moving forward, an indicator of things to come. So if we move into the topics that we're addressing, if we look quickly, first of all, at 2020, going back to the things that drove the needle for us, the main challenges that we saw and the messages and the learning curve that we followed in 2020. Peter, how has Equinix responded to 2020? What were the main challenges that you saw in 2020 from COVID? And coming forward out of that, how do you feel? What have you learned from this?
Yeah, thank you. 2020, I think the most interesting was people. The technology works. I'm very sure about that. But people who make possible that everything still works. That was the main challenge: keeping everybody healthy, everybody safe. I'm proud of my team that they managed to get everything done without any interruption. So that was a great achievement.
I think it's a very important point that you were able to keep everybody really healthy while they were doing it. Coen, from your perspective, how did you see, or what were the main challenges that you, as a manufacturer, Honeywell, saw in meeting challenges in 2020?
Yeah, this is of course a challenge we never experienced before. So back in March, we were quite nervous, I have to say, as Honeywell Building Technology. But from day one, we have seen a very good cooperation with our partner system integrators. Based on the local conditions, they still found manners to go on site, and I'm really proud of our partners. Not only for servicing existing installations, but also really to deploy the latest technologies in new installations. So it's an example of a great partnership in 2020.
It's that kind of flexibility to be able to respond to what was, in essence, a crisis situation for all of us. I understand. Frank, from your perspective, from a system integrator perspective, just to highlight Beveco. Beveco is one of the leading system integrators in the data center sector in Europe and well respected, well known across the entire continent. How did you respond? How did you step up to the plate, really, when going got tough in March, April?
Yes, Cathal, that's indeed challenging times. Well, for all of us, of course, without any doubt. But especially for us as a system integrator, we do a lot of work already remotely, right? From our office, or in this particular case, from our home offices. But what was really hard, of course, is at the end we have to deliver projects, right? Some of them were key projects in the data center industry were already pending, started, and then you have to deliver, right? So you can. Luckily, we are in the lucky position that we can do that remotely. But of course, we also need to be on site, like for example, commissioning, etc. And I'm really proud, and already mentioned by the other guys, that of course keeping your staff healthy, that's key. That's the first priority. But on the other hand, you have to deliver, as I already mentioned, and then they did that, and that's good to see that it all worked. But I think the biggest challenge for us is in the integrator, and you work in a team, of course, with a project manager, project engineers, your partners, other suppliers, etc. And then the communication is always key. And in this particular times, it's even more challenging, of course. We all went online, Teams, Zoom, or whatever. And then, well, at the end, we still made it. And then that also gives a little bit mixed feelings in a way that, like us, I think we finished one of our best years ever. And on the other hand, in other industries, you see companies struggling, of course. And that's strange. But luckily, with the data center industry, of course, we are on the right side, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point. For those companies who've had a very difficult 2020, we see a split down the middle of companies within the data center sector who've done really well, and others who have struggled throughout the year. Maybe there's an impetus there for them to change their focus, maybe also focus on data centers as a growth sector. For those of you who've struggled, I can just say this is just a moment in time. It will pass. Stay focused, and things will get better. Looking at the topic that we've chosen, I think it's pretty much fundamental to data centers and to the data center industry as a whole. We're talking about reducing risk. So when we say uptime, really in reality, what we're talking about is reducing risk to data centers during their operations. One of the key ways we see of doing that is drawing from a larger pool of data to make more informed decisions. Through making more informed decisions, we have the capability to reduce, the resources that we use. For example, Peter, how do you see going forward? What role will further digitalization play in companies like Equinix?
We use and going to use our data much more. It brings us better insights in our installations, how they are working properly, are they in design specs, but also are there opportunities to increase energy efficiency, and that is I think one of the main points for the next years, reducing our energy, not only based on cost, but also from my point of perspective and from Equinix. We need to reduce our energy consumption. It's not a sustainable model to keep this way what we are doing right now.
I think that's a very good point, Peter. We have a corporate citizenship role to play as players here, and again, we're being called to bat. How do we act more cleverly? And there's a lot to do there. Coen, from your perspective, serving your end customers and working with your partners, what are the main drivers for you? Where do you see data improving your services or improving your offering for end users?
Yeah, for us, it's today all about data. In the past, whenever we supplied technology solutions for end users, it was normally more done in a silo. Today, there's really an integrated setup between, for instance, security, safety, fire, and building management. Also, everything is way more intelligent than it has ever been before.
Yep.
So we really provide a tool, a dashboard for our customers, for instance, data center, to make quickly the right decisions. So
So what we're looking at, making more informed decisions and looking at data-driven outcomes as opposed to just simple algorithms or simple rules-based control strategies, for example.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. I think there's also a play there for cloud and AI applications or machine learning applications going forward. Do you agree with that? Are there areas that you see where we can progress there?
Machine learning, it's all about AI and machine learning nowadays. So yeah, we really use our edge devices and sensors in the field to gather all the information and to make the critical decision based on AI and machine learning technology. So that's definitely a large focus area for us in the next years. Yeah.
That's very good. Frank, from your perspective as a system integrator, and what I really like about this panel is that we've got, a broad view of the data center sector. It'd be ideal, at a later stage, maybe to bring in somebody from a general contractor or from a design firm. But from your perspective as a system integrator, how will big data or improved and more granular data change the way you serve your customers going forward?
Yeah, for us, I think it's already interesting to be, of course, in the data center industry, but I think it will be even more interesting in the coming years. What we're going to see to happen. Just to be clear, we are active in the industry in two ways. First of all, within the building controls area, delivering projects, and on the other hand, providing a data center management platform. Collecting all those data from the subsystems, like Coen already mentioned, security, fire, and comfort, as we call that. I'll show a little bit later in this webinar a nice slide about it. But for us, it's key first to connect the dots. You have to collect them, right? And then I think we're already playing there a very important part, integrating all those subsystems. I see a lot of data center operators like Equinix, of course, being interested to make that even more uniform and more flexible. But if you, as we call that uniform tagging, if you have it on that level, what we call then the middle level of management systems, we can, for example, change that data from data to information into actions. But for example, also provide that to a business application on top of that. And that could be, for example, from Honeywell Forge with the AI. It can be another data lake like IBM Watson delivering some stuff. That can be, for example, predictive maintenance. And we as an integrator, I think are well positioned to make conclusions, draw conclusions out of that, and then proactively go back to our customers and then advise them on steps to take. And therefore, I think it will be even more interesting for us. And on the other hand, it will also open up, I think, a completely new business model in a way that we now, I would say, traditionally provide a project based on a capex investment. But it also opens, of course, doors to more, I would say, business model. Providing continuously advices and reports, etc., on a monthly or the daily or whatever basis to customers and help them improving even more.
So it's really an evolution from a simple sale base or an install base to actually becoming that trusted advisor on a regular basis.
Exactly. Yeah, that's key for us, of course, to be indeed the trusted advisor, the first party to go to. I think we have deep knowledge of all those systems, and therefore we are, I think, well positioned to support customers like Equinix and other data center operators to even improve their efficiency. And then what I liked also during the preparation to this webinar, to this panel session, is that Peter mentioned, referring to the title of this webinar, increasing uptime. But in the end, it's not the key differentiator anymore to the data center operators, which really opened my eyes in a way that, of course, all those data center operators are nearly 100%. But it's now the next step to really mitigate the risks and how you're going to deal with that. And we touched that point later, but data there, of course, is key to make the right decisions and then convert that into information and the right actions and insights.
Precisely. I mean, that's what it goes back to. What we're doing is creating more sophisticated scenarios, but really, as you mentioned, uptime is not an option. Failure is not an option. It's all about creating more efficient ways of reaching those outcomes and then reducing whatever risks may come during those times. Part of that journey towards a more, if I would put it very simply, a cleverer approach to doing business for data centers is standardization. Standardization of workflows and creating more efficient working practices, processes for our operations. Coen, can you talk to me a little bit about standard operating procedures and how those will evolve over time for Honeywell?
Yeah, standardization is really important, especially with regards to safety and security. Now, for instance, from a security perspective, in case of incidents, alarms, or events, operators really go through a process driven workflow. So there are no surprises, which is very important, of course, in the data center business. And they are really guided through several steps in order to make sure they can hopefully close a certain incident successfully. So this is really key. But next to that, especially in the fire business, which is all about local legislation, it is all about standardization, you know. But what we also see here, which is very interesting, is that also from an installation point of view, we do really try to standardize. So a good example is that we nowadays have self-testing detectors, which saves a lot of time. And because of the standardization, it's really a value add for data center customers.
I understand.
Last but not least, I think more from the comfort perspective, it's also standardization is also, of course, linked to backwards compatibility. That's something we can enable nowadays. For instance, the trend controllers, which are installed in 50% of the data centers worldwide. You know, whenever one breaks down, we can always replace that with the latest version, and everything works and is compatible. So that's also an area where we see a lot of advantages of standardization.
I understand. And taking this from beyond just the perspective of single manufacturers, openly, you know, we're talking about standardization also in communications models, that we can integrate devices from various manufacturers. We know from hyperscale providers, they're not going to put all of their eggs in one basket with one manufacturer. We're all about competition, really creating the best possible conditions to deliver the best possible results for end users. And in doing that, really competition pushes us to be our best every day.
Yeah.
Frank, from your perspective, I know standardization is also a very important role for a very important topic for system integrators and for Beveco also. Can you explain a little bit how Beveco is adapting to that?
Well, first of all, we are, of course, I would say, a brand-independent system integrator, meaning that, of course, we are a partner, for example, for the trend control systems, and as Coen just mentioned, for decades already. But we cover, of course, a lot of partners, and we see a lot of technologies. But for us, it's of course also key to standardize in a way we can't support all the brands in the market, right? Because our staff really gets crazy then, and it's very hard to support that in the field, and that's what we are going to do, of course. Once we deliver a project, at the end we are here to support data center operators for the next 10-50 years. Well, my preference is of course forever, but that's up to them. But in a way that, of course, that helps, of course, to also standardize in a way, providing those services to our customers, and educate our people in the right way.
So I think that's a very important point, Frank. I mean, I know from the perspective of Beveco that there's a strong focus within your business, within Beveco specifically, on upskilling people, on giving opportunity to new engineers, to creating the conditions for people to become their best. And you know, that obviously involves them doing the hard work, but it's something that you foster within the business, that your leadership is very focused on, creating the conditions for people to within a standardized model, begin to develop their own careers, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. We hire a lot of young engineers and provide them a growth path. And then for us, standardization also gives us a lot of opportunities. I would say to differentiate to our customers and provide that added value. Because at the end, a data center in the US is different compared to one in Amsterdam, for example. They have a lot of more room and space than we have, of course. So I would say the typicals and the ideas, etc., are completely different. And then for us, is of course as a local partner, helping us or helping our customers, to I would say implement the global standard to the specifics here in the Netherlands, for example. And there we can really show the added value to that.
I think for operators as well, I'm speaking on behalf of Peter here, but I think there's always a desire within data center operators to learn from their different operations around the world how, for example, legislation or requirements in the Netherlands may push improvements that can be rolled out globally, for example.
It is true. The Netherlands is focusing on energy efficiency. A lot of technologies and easy ways to save energy are tested here in the Netherlands and also shared with our colleagues abroad.
Yep. I'd just like to use this opportunity to remind people listening, we would be very grateful to have questions, input, comments. We're in this together, as mentioned at the outset. If you have any questions or you'd like to pose any questions to individual panel members, please do. Looking at, we're talking about data driving better outcomes, better outcomes for our end users in the end, and better outcomes for the planet. Peter, where do you see this going in 3 years? From your perspective, what is Equinix goal, or some of the goals, or some of the targets that you'd like to set with data-driven decision making in the next couple of years?
One of the main items, I think, is data centers are already creating a lot of data, but we are not using the data in an easy way. You have to have at least a PhD to analyze all that data, and that's not possible. So data should be presented in an easy way for engineers to make decisions. People can absorb a maximum amount of data, and to use all the data you already have. Presentation is one of the items we have to focus on.
I think that's a very, very good point. Yeah.
Easy dashboards, and if you have a dashboard, the next step is of course machine learning and intelligence, adding intelligence to the data. So an engineer doesn't have to look where can I find opportunities to maximize energy efficiency. No, the data will tell you, look over there. There is a possibility to increase temperature or optimize systems. That is the next 3 years. We're working on that.
Okay, Coen, helpfully you've brought up a slide that shows just as Peter was mentioning, the vast number of areas within a data center that bring data of some way, some way, shape, or form. It's a vast amount of information that you need at some stage to actually begin to correlate. Where are manufacturers going in this direction? What are we looking for?
Yeah, for us as manufacturers, it's today all about data, especially due to the integrated setup where we bring all the data together. If you compare this with several years ago, we worked actually more in silos. We installed security systems, fire safety systems, building management, comfort systems. But nowadays it's really about the integration, providing the tools for our customers to make intelligent decisions. And one good example here is, for instance, that we can work more, or customers can work more proactive, or installation system integrated customers and less reactive. What I mean, for instance, due to all kind of analytics and algorithms. System integrators receive notifications 2 weeks in advance before a certain sensor is going to break down. So this is really a large advantage. Next to that, from a manufacturer perspective, we know that all our partners have a shortage of skilled engineers. So we are also providing the tools with data to make sure they can really reduce the workload, work more efficient. So this is also a large focus area. Next to that, I think a very important theme nowadays linked to data is that we work really outcome-based, compared with in the past where we deployed a solution. We can really sit down with the end user customer and go through their objectives and develop dashboards which are, for instance, linked to energy consumption or energy usage dashboards, really aligned with their key objectives. So that's also a very important theme in our business. And last but not least, it's, as I already said, it's all about integration. So we also provide an open platform to also integrate with third-party platforms, which is of extreme value add, of course.
I understand. I think it's a very valid point. We're talking about not just delivering solutions, but delivering solutions more cleverly. Everybody in a data center knows about the challenges that we face with alarm floods, with hundreds of alarms coming in. And we know what it's like if you have that vast amount of data coming at you with alarms. It could be you're going to miss one. And therefore, having a more targeted, cleverer system will help us to avoid that feature creep and that flood of alarms that can otherwise obfuscate what we really need to be looking at. Frank, from your perspective, where do you see this going?
Well, Coen is now sharing a slide, I would say, envisioning our idea, our way of thinking. Just to make it clear, there's a 3-layer model in this. So I start at the bottom where you see all the systems, as Coen already showed in the previous slide, touching security, fire, and comfort. In the middle, there is what we call then the data center management system / supervisor level, collecting all the data and then already providing a lot of information to the operator. But as I was already referring to, for example, the Honeywell for its solution, there is a layer on top of that, in our opinion, providing, I would say, more the business applications, more the business insights. And I fully agree with Coen. We can't do this on our own, right? We can't compete, of course, as a medium-sized system integrator to global companies focusing on AI solutions, as already mentioned, like Watson or stuff like that. But it's indeed all about predictive maintenance, providing the data to those systems, to those ERP systems or facility management systems, which you also see there. And that's our vision. And on the right, that's touching also the point related to mobility, because we already touched data as a key driver, of course, without any doubt. But people are also flexible, of course, and not always behind their desks watching at their screens. So it's for us also very important to provide that data on, for example, tablets or iPhones in this particular case, to make live decisions based on that data when there are, for example, in a white space hall and watching certain errors or incidents occur, and they directly can act on that. That's in short, I would say, because I can talk for hours about this this slide alone. But this is for us, this is key, right? Where you see, for example, open systems in the comfort area with the trend controller there showed, cutting all those, for example, air handling units and lighting, etc., cooling towers. That we can do that, but as already mentioned by Coen, fire is another part of that. Security has its own protocols, and again, it's all about connecting all those dots, and then there we come into play. can be via the supervisor, or as I mentioned, by our own data center management system. That's up to, I would say, the customer to make the decisions. But what this model is actually showing is the multi-layer and then turning data into information, as already mentioned.
Exactly. That's a very good way to describe it, I think, Frank. Turning data into information, not just stuff that's flowing by and throwing it at you, but throwing actually or providing you suggestions what to do next.
Yeah, and as already mentioned by Peter about this topic, it's all key about presenting the data in the right way, and that's what I mean with information, because you can provide dashboards on the middle level via the DMS or the supervisor. We already do that. We have specific dashboards based on data centers, which unfortunately I can't show at the moment. They're confidential, but they're already there. But what this model is actually showing is also the connection to the layer above. That can be that ERP system, that can be anything else. But there, I think that really is interesting, as already mentioned, is to be proactive. That data opens a lot of possibilities, as we, mainly in the past, were quite reactive, of course, responding to incidents. Hopefully, we can turn that into a proactive way and preventing even to the incident to happen.
Exactly. I think if there's one key takeaway, Frank, you've hit the nail on the head. It's really moving from reactive to proactive, beginning to think cleverly about our situation. Just going back onto that, Coen, there's one thing, I'd like you briefly maybe to touch on. COVID has shown us, we need more healthy buildings. We need a focus on maintaining safe workspaces when we do go back to those workspaces. That obviously affects not just data centers, but also the other areas within the industry. How are we responding to that? How do you see the industry responding to that? And what can we do to try and mitigate, the propagation of disease vectors going forward? COVID will be conquered someday, but who knows when the next one is going to come?
Yeah. Now, my perspective on this is that from day one, we have really seen that the industry, the building technology industry, pivoted to all kind of new solutions. What, for instance, we have nowadays in Honeywell are healthy building dashboards, which is all about social distancing analytics, mask detection, more on the video analytics side. But also after, let's say, more in the post-COVID area, we expect that touchless access control will be the standard, mobile access, biometrics readers, or facial recognition face scanners that we have nowadays in our portfolio. But we expect that this will also sustain after basically in the post-COVID time. Next to that, of course, we have seen an increase in remote management, as Frank also addressed. Of course, this should always be possible, aligned with the policies of a certain customer, but we definitely expect a further uptake in this because it brings so many advantages, value add. It's also about really remotely updating the firmware of cameras and passwords. So in the end, it's also about security. Last but not least, of course, we in Honeywell also really try to partner with companies like Beveco to bring in additional innovations and benefits. For instance, UV filtering, lighting, etc. These are all kind of areas we closely monitor.
So we can proactively clean workspaces, for example, that meeting rooms and create more healthy buildings.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Moving forward, I think I recognize we've got about 10 minutes left. If we focus on some of the closing topics, innovation, I think we've recognized, and if we look at the slides that you've been sharing, Frank and Coen, we see that there are a broad number of areas, a massive number of areas where we're dragging data in from. How will innovation affect how we're moving forward? Peter, what would you say are from Equinix perspective, and speaking on behalf of operators generally, what are the main innovation drivers? What do you want from innovation?
Increasing uptime, that's not the question. So that's not.
It's a moot point.
That's very easy. So return on investment, saving money by using the data and building systems smarter. That is one way to stay ahead of the pack. But from my personal perspective, energy reduction, water reduction, that will be the next 3 to 5 years a main topic, not only here in the Netherlands, but worldwide. If the data center wants to be sustainable and keeping this growth rate, we should do something about the energy consumption and water consumption. So you cannot do that alone. We need good partners to help us to achieve those goals.
I think that's a very good point. So really, as a society, we're looking at our carbon footprint. We're moving away from diesel cars. We're moving away from petrol cars. We're looking towards clever solutions to be more mobile. And in the same way, the data that we have needs to get clean as well, effectively.
Absolutely. And I think it's better to be a front runner instead of waiting on the government putting legislation in place.
Sure. And again, I think for the industry, government relies on industry associations and also on providers, operators to advise them. How can we get there? What are realizable, targetable goals that are achievable, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. And as a global company, we can make a global impact.
For sure. Coen, from your perspective, looking at the safety, security, and BMS vertical as a whole, and not just from a Honeywell perspective, but from a broader perspective, where do you see this going? What is our contribution, and what can we do to provide more innovative solutions to end users and society as a whole?
I think it's very important that we always start with the objective of our customers, and that we work really outcome-based. We just heard all things about energy reduction. These are themes that should also be central in our offerings with regards to data that we provide to our end users. So this is really key, and that's a massive change how we worked several years ago.
Yeah.
And next to that, also I think another example is within the fire business, just to talk about specific innovation. There's a lot of lithium energy storage nowadays in data centers, and we recently developed a device which can detect off-gas, and off-gas is normally the stage before smoke and fire. So we can really reduce the risks for data centers, fire risks associated with that.
I think that line tamer product it's a perfect case in point. We're looking at proactive instead of reactive. We're doing something before a problem occurs. We're mitigating the root cause as opposed to waiting for something to happen and then responding accordingly.
Yes, exactly.
Frank, from your perspective, from the system integrator, speaking again, not just for Beveco, but for system integrators as a whole, where is the innovative contribution that system integrators are going to make?
Well, taking it a little bit broader indeed than our own role, because of course we have our own development and innovate a lot of stuff based on our own solutions. But on the other part, we also heavily rely, of course, on our partners then. For example, looking at Honeywell and bringing those innovations together to the field in a way to really implement them and make them a first-time right solution.
Mm-hmm. And also with regard to
success. And then, for example, go ahead.
I think one of those areas, like you say, it's a collaboration really between multiple parties within the vertical. Not just nobody is in a position to solve all of these problems alone.
Correct. No, indeed, it's all about that. And what we bring on the table is, of course, is I would say the deeper inside knowledge of a data center, the processes, and then we are there, and then we have that and together with partners, bringing those innovations really to a success. By coincidence, and we will start, and I got this news this morning, we will start, and it's besides the data center industry, but we will work together with Honeywell on, I would say, a first pilot, at least in the Netherlands, providing a cloud solution to our customer, and bringing in this particular case, the BMS, the building controls data into a cloud of Honeywell. And making those advices back to the customer, and giving them the insights. That's, I think, a good example of showing that we are driving those innovations really into practice.
For sure. I see we've got 5 minutes left. So we've got one question that I think is close to my heart that I'd like to address. I'd like to remind the listeners, if you have questions, please type them into the box. We're more than happy to answer those. We'll have a Q&A directly after this. So quick fire round. We're looking at the system integrator model, working with partners. I've been doing this for years. I really enjoy it across the globe. Peter, for you, system integrators, what's the benefit of this channel, this way of approaching the market? What do you value about this, and what would you like to see more?
I think it's great delivery is a difference maker. You have to trust in good delivery, and only a good product isn't a good installation. You need local expertise to make sure that the product is implemented as well. So using a local partner, make sure that projects are running smooth. And one of the key benefits of using a local partner is these times of travel restrictions, that your partner is still available to serve you as normal.
That's an excellent point, yeah. Coen, from your perspective, again, just briefly, how do you see the partner channel evolving? What are the main benefits for us for Honeywell as a company, but also for the broader industry as a whole?
Mm-hmm. Honeywell is, of course, a multinational with a global footprint, but for us, partners are really key. Again, really to deliver that local experience. They are familiar with the local business, local settings. So partners like Beveco are key in everything what we do. And I think the main advantage is also that it gives the end user customers a certain amount of flexibility. They can choose between several partners. So that's why we always want to have more partners in a certain geography. So these are all kind of advantages. And next to that, what I also really see is that with in the area where we live nowadays, which is all about connected devices, connected technology, we see also that a lot of new services are developing also for our partner business. So it's all about connected 24 hours connection, 24 hours per day connection. So it's a really exciting time for us to be in together with our partners like Beveco. And most importantly, I think also companies like Beveco, they also really bring in their own skill set.
Okay.
As Honeywell, we cannot do everything, and we always see that they are really specialized in certain areas.
Awesome. Frank, from your perspective, at 30 seconds, future of system integrators, why is it cool to be a system integrator, an independent system integrator? 30 seconds.
30 seconds. We'll do it in 10 then. Yeah. Now, what I really like from our position is that we are close to the customer, talking to them and filling in those requirements, those needs they have in a way that how do you say this? That you can make a selection out of the technologies you provide. We are not married with Honeywell in this particular case, so we can also offer other solutions and in that way support our customer making the right choices related to, for example, technology, but that can be in other areas too.
I think that's a very, very valid point. So really some of the key takeaways, moving from reactive to proactive, And the closing point that you make, Frank, is choice. Providing system integrators or providing end users with the best possible solutions from a whole basket of options. So I would like to use this opportunity to thank everybody who joined us today. I'm sure this is the beginning of a great conversation. You can reach out to any of us through our respective channels. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Again, hats off to everybody in the industry. I think you've done a great job in 2020. We can all be very proud of what we've been able to do, keeping people safe and still delivering for end users and for our society as a whole. It's been an impressive year in that context. We can move on to some of our questions. So in a scale of 1 to 10, this is a question from Ovidi. In a scale of 1 to 10, how important is remote monitoring of different building services in a data center today? I'd like to throw that one, first of all, to Peter as an operator.
Very important. Even if your site is manned of staff 24/7, you really want to have remote access for the specialists. That saves a lot of time and saves a lot of traveling, but also you can react much faster. So remote monitoring is today, but also in the near future, one of the major points for a data center operator.
I believe so as well. Coen, from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, we have seen this recently during COVID, that there is a tremendous uptake with regards to remote monitoring, but I think it also brings safety and security advantages because, for instance, we can always remotely manage the firmware of devices, so we always guarantee the highest level of security, which is also key, especially in the data center operation. Yeah.
I think that's a very important point. Frank, from your perspective, again, looking at that remote monitoring, can you comment on that? I kind of know what's coming on here.
Sorry, what's the specific question, Cathal?
Remote monitoring in data centers, how important the role of remote monitoring, and particularly against the backdrop of COVID, how you've been able to mitigate disease vectors through remote monitoring, for example, as a system integrator. Yeah,
for us, that's of course key in a way that we have to match our SLAs, so level agreements we have with our customers. We can respond and be within 4 hours on site, but it's of course even better and at the end also cheaper for the customer that we connect remotely and support them. That's the best for all of us, right? Because as already mentioned, our resources are limited. Instead of driving in a car to an Amsterdam data center, it's even more effective and more efficient, of course, to remotely connect to that and see what's happening and make the right decisions, sending somebody in.
Yeah, and it's not only reacting faster, but it's also much easier for staff on site. Hey, we have seen something, a minor issue or a detail, but let's get a specialist to assist us with this minor issue. So remote monitoring or remote access is a very helpful tool.
So it's about doing stuff more cleverly.
Yeah.
A question from Dieter, and we've got buckets of questions. I'd like to encourage more. We don't have that much time, but of course we'll get back to you with any questions that we haven't been able to answer. So a question from Dieter. I read more and more about immersion liquid cooling. What does that mean for new data centers to be developed by data center providers going forward? Peter, your thoughts on immersion cooling?
Personally, I think the next 5 to 10 years is not going to be the major new equipment that will be brought in. But if a data center operator built his data center so it's adaptable to new ways of cooling, like immersion cooling, that will save costs in the near future. So new data centers should keep in mind that immersion cooling can be added or replace air cooling for immersion cooling. But for the next 5 to 10 years, I don't see a major market share for that.
I understand. I think there are in many ways, immersion cooling is a generic term. We also see system chip cooling, so you've got cooling directly onto a chip. That could also play a role. We see more and more through in-row cooling. So there are a lot of flexible options there. I think one of the key drivers is really how do you increase efficiency and safety, reduce risk, while not increasing cost.
Yeah, immersion cooling, a global place like Google or hyperscale place, they can choose from day one, okay, let's build a data center for immersion cooling. That's much easier. As Equinix as a wholesale and also serving major customers, we will have the next 20 years air-cooled equipment in our data centers. I'm quite sure about that.
We've got one more question. We'll wrap up after this. Just very briefly, what are the key metrics for data center requirements? We've got PUE, we've got carbon footprint, we've got battery monitoring. I think the answer to that is all of them, all of these,
including water, but also complete footprint. If you can choose for a natural cooling agent instead of F-gases, that will be one of the items added to all those key indicators.
That's a very good point. I think that's it's really the key drivers don't change. It's safety, security, corporate citizenship, energy efficiency, treating the planet well, making sure we hand it over in a good condition to our kids.
The sum of all those items.
Yeah. Okay, folks, I would like to take the opportunity again to thank you all for your participation today. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. I'm grateful to the panel for taking part today. It's been a very entertaining process talking to you guys as well. I'd like to thank Wouter for the opportunity to host this for you. I'd also like, obviously, to take the opportunity to thank the guys at Kickstart Europe. I think it's an awesome show. I look forward to seeing everybody in person again next year. And thanks for your contributions, guys. I'm just again looking back at 2020, speechless at what we've been able to achieve. Let's make sure we continue on the same path.